Hey everyone, this is Comics Villain. Welcome to another episode on Stranger Things Season 3. This is going to be Episode 2, The Mallrats, which I guess they're calling, they go and call these episodes chapters. So this is Chapter 2, which, that makes sense. I mean, it's almost like an hour long at times. So this episode was really interesting. So what I'm going to do for this is I will not spoil anything in the beginning, but I will have a spoiler towards the end. You probably have heard of this style. It's called mullet style. Nice up front, party in the back kind of a thing. You got everything, all the spoilers in the back. So we'll do it in that format. What I will say about this episode was they've been getting things right this season. I really like it. It brings me back to the feel of the first season, which the second season, again, it kind of dropped the ball a little bit with some of the weirder elements of it, the more punk rock stuff, and the weird side story of Eleven. I didn't care as much about. I think that it's better to have the kids all together than off on their own. That'll probably open up things later in the future, but I believe for 11, the actress, what is her name? Millie Brown? I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but I think this might be her last season. That's just what I heard a while back. That could always change. In any case, the episode was great, had cool elements, cool horror elements, and it definitely had a good 80s horror movie vibe to it. Because we see a little bit more about Billy. We see, you may or may not see some things involving the monsters, and we're getting more of a feel for what's going on with the town. We're starting to see the real story behind everything. So if you're interested, definitely listen in for the spoilers. They're coming up shortly. I will say that this season seems to be a lot more focused on the 80s side of things. Now, every other season, the other two seasons, they were focused on 80s and such, but they were focusing on very specific elements. The first season was the best. Second, it dropped the ball, but there were good things in there. I mean, you saw like the Halloween aspect. You saw them dressing up as Ghostbusters. There was a lot of stuff, but this is, I think, nailing down more of the themes. Some of the cliche elements from the 80s, which is not always a bad thing. It's been a while since I've seen anything really good that was 80s related come out. It's been a little while. So this is actually very fun, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Alright, so this is the part we're going to talk about spoilers. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, haven't seen episode 2, then definitely take off from here. I can catch you guys in the next video, or come back to this after you've seen it, and we can see what you can see what my thoughts were basically are. So we start off seeing Billy. He survived the previous episode, the ending. I mean, the monster seemingly let him go. He gets back to his car, which somehow is working pretty well. He gets out of there. He gets to a telephone booth. I thought personally that the car stopped working, like he damaged it, but apparently that wasn't the case. So he gets to a telephone booth, gets in, tries to make a call, and has a quick flashback to the monster taking him. And also the monster had, did like a little, what is that called from Alien, the face hugger? It implanted something in him. Probably a monster from the Upside Down. And so he gets transported all of a sudden, just like in previous episodes or previous seasons, to the Upside Down. Other characters have had this happen to them. It happens instantly. So he steps out of the telephone booth. Everything's dark, cloudy, and filled with these weird little particles in the air. And he sees a group of people coming towards him. He can't make out any their faces. It's extremely dark, but one of them comes up to him, and it's revealed to be himself. He's freaked out.
So the next part is the police officer is named Hopper. Back at his cabin, there's this whole interaction, this new interaction with Elle when the boy Mike, he calls. Or actually, I'm sorry. Elle calls Mike because he didn't come over. I guess that's been like a pattern. They've been seeing each other quite often and making out and stuff. So he is actually very shaken up, it would seem, over the phone. Starts making up a lot of things so that he doesn't have to come over and see her because he's probably afraid of Hopper, the police officer, who sees Elle or 11 like a daughter, and he's being overly protective. So he makes up a lot of stuff, then gets off the phone with her. She's visibly upset, but Hopper, on the other hand, is extremely happy. Which is kind of funny. He gets back in his car. He's gonna go to work and stuff, and he's like singing songs. And actually, he heads over to see the Winona Ryder's character. His name is Joyce Byers, and she's working at the store. And he comes in and says, "Hey, I did it. Everything's working out perfectly. It looks like I just had to talk with Mike, the boy, And it seems everything's fine." And she asks, "Well, did you say everything I told you to say? You memorized it, and everything worked for where?" He said, "Yeah, but I have to improvise a little." She asked, "Did you yell at him though?" And he says, "Well, I'll tell you over dinner." So he basically tries to, get them going out later on that night. She's a little hesitant, but he convinces her ultimately, and. Afterwards, after they kind of confirm it, he gets a call on his radio. "Hey, I need some help. Looks like there's protests going on." One of his officers is dealing with it, probably by City Hall. It's a protest. So he starts to walk out, and then all of a sudden, some things off of the shelf fall off. Didn't know what it was. It looked like it might have been him doing that at first, like by accident. Maybe he hit it, but that wasn't the case. So after Hopper leaves, Joyce comes back over to kind of clean that up, and she noticed, hey, it's the magnets again. Just like in her home in the first episode, where a drawing that was all colored up by her son for the ex-boyfriend of hers who had died, who was played by Sean Astin. It had fallen from the fridge. It had a magnet over it. So there's some wacky stuff going on again with the magnets here in the store. And then the next scene shows Nancy at her new work, where I want to say it looks like she's just like an intern here, but it looks like she wants to actually work for the Post. She basically wants to follow a lead that she got about some rats and stuff, like diseased rats, which is the same thing that we had seen in the first episode, where the rats were eating something in that one farm and exploding. So there's quite a bit that's going on right now, and she eventually goes to chase down the lead and takes Jonathan, her now boyfriend. Well, actually, since season 2, they've been boyfriend and girlfriend. So now we're back at the Starcourt Mall by Hot Dog on a Stick. So then we're back over at the Starcourt Mall, and we head over to see Dustin meets up with Steve at Scoops Ahoy. So they're super excited to meet each other. It's kind of funny. Also, it's really interesting that the character, Steve. It's interesting that not Steve. Sorry. It's interesting that the character Dustin had actually took out the the fake teeth that he had in the second season. It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just for a little bit, I thought they were going to continue on with that route. So basically, Dustin tells Steve that he had received a Russian, transmission, and he needs help with the translation for it. So they're probably going to translate it, and maybe, I don't know if they're actually going to decipher anything, but yeah, he says to him, hey, we'll be American heroes if you do this, and maybe we'll get all the women you want, all that stuff. So later on, 11 or L goes to talk to Max, I guess about boyfriend issues and what she can do, and Max basically says that he's probably lying to her. He's got nothing better to do. You don't know why, but he's treating you poorly, so you should treat him poorly and just pretend he doesn't exist. And if he doesn't fix everything, you just dump him. But then on the other side of things, Mike is now talking to Lucas, and Lucas is telling him that there's a way to fix all of it, and that he's going to show him because he was dumped 5 times by Max. Something like that. So they all go out and they're gonna, do what they can with the answers they've come up with. But it may make things worse in the long run. You don't know. And then next up we go to the community pool, the Hawkins community pool, and Karen's there. I think what is her last name? Is Wheeler. She sees Billy's finally back. He's the lifeguard again. She doesn't know what happened because they had a thing that they were going to they're going to go to the motel together, but so she didn't actually even show up. That was the interesting part. She didn't actually go. She stayed home, and she goes into like this locked area where Billy had gone into. Maybe he was just going in there to kind of recuperate for a second before he goes back out. She finds him and she says, "Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't come last night. I got a family. I don't want to hurt them, and it doesn't seem right to do this." He, on the other hand, all of a sudden has this vision of this, where he envisions vividly turning around quickly, grabbing her head and cracking it on the side of one of the shelves in that little store, in this like storage area, I guess. He snaps out of it, and then she's still talking to him, and just, hey, like, can you talk to me? He turns around and says, just leave me alone, Karen. He walks out, and as he's walking out, he goes outside in the sunlight. Everything's affecting him. Like, his senses are like dialed up majorly, and even the sunlight is too much for him. Just looking at anything right now in the sunlight, it's too bright for him and too much. So later, they show Dustin and Steve back at Scoops Ahoy, and they're trying to decipher like the Russian, the Russian like code. Steve mentions that the music is interesting, like he's heard it before, so that'll probably play into things later on when we actually discuss that again. It'd be weird if they just dropped it there, just for a joke. So at some point, Erica comes out. She's like, "Hey, let me help you guys. I've already heard everything you've said. You guys are really loud." She's getting frustrated with, or upset by Lucas's sister, Robin, who keeps asking to try out like the same ice cream over and over as a sample. And she says, that she's fluent in 4 languages, but none of them are Russian. And that she could help out a lot, and she's doing it mostly because she's just bored out of her mind. So she has Steve kind of go back out to the front while she helps to translate everything. So next up, the lead that had called Nancy, I guess her name is Mrs. Driscoll. Jonathan and Nancy go to her house, and she tells them like what she knows about the diseased rats. What she says, down in her basement, she had some fertilizer, and for some odd reason, all the rats ate tons of the fertilizer. And she doesn't know exactly why. None of them do.
But Miss Driscoll then says that she did catch one of them and brings him over to this cage that has a cloth over it, preventing anyone from seeing inside. And so the rat inside is making all sorts of noise, bashing into the side of the cage, and it does not sound like a normal rat. Which at this point we already know as the viewers this is not normal in any way, shape, or form. Then next up, Hopper goes to the mayor's office, and the mayor wants him to do his job and get rid of the protesters. They don't have a permit. Hopper says it doesn't look good for him. The mayor basically is saying, I really don't care. I have a big, July 4th bash I want to plan out, and that's really all that the voters are going to remember after this. The majority of them. And it comes off as, I don't know, I didn't like the way they did this, but he just comes off as this a-hole, mayor, who really only cares about the votes, and it really was like he's not even trying at that point to be convincing of much of anything, So I don't know, it came off weird to me. Then we go to Starcourt, and Max brought Elle there, maybe to try to get over things a little bit. And we also see the boys are in the mall, and they're trying to find, I guess it's a gift for Elle. And maybe Mike will be forgiven at that point. He doesn't really know exactly what to get, and Lucas does, though. Lucas is going to show him exactly what they're going to do. And Elle is, with Max, and Max is saying, get a dress for yourself, get an outfit, something that's you. So I guess this is Elle trying to focus more on herself then, I guess, huh? Moving on, we actually go back to Miss Driscoll's basement, and you see them, Jonathan taking pictures of the diseased rat, or maybe it's a possessed rat, I don't know. We also show Nancy, who's upstairs. Jonathan's downstairs taking the pictures of the rat in the basement. Nancy's upstairs on the phone. She got permission by Miss Driscoll to make a few calls. She's trying to find out who else has had issues with rats. But then you go back to Jonathan, and the rat, it sort of stopped. And it looks like it's in pain, and it's on its side. Nancy's saying, hey, let's go. And he says, hey, there's something wrong with this rat. She says, yeah, I know, let's go. So he runs up, but then when no one's down there, you see the lights are flickering, and all of a sudden the rat explodes, just like the other ones. But this time you see the aftermath, which was, it transforms, it exploded into jelly, rat jelly. And it's able at that point to get out of the cage, the wired cage. It just slips out and then just takes off. We don't know where to, though. So we go and see Billy back, doing lifeguard, and it looks like his skin is being burned on his left elbow by the sun. So he takes off from there. He's really just disoriented by the sunlight. So he goes back into I don't know, it's not just a storage area. I guess there's also a shower there and stuff. So he turns it on. I'm sure it's on cold, and he's trying to cool down. But then he looks at his right arm, and I think it was his right arm, and he sees these black veins starting to appear. He touches them and then sees a glimpse of the Mind Flayer for just a brief moment, like there's a connection between the two, or at least to me it looked like the Mind Flayer. He kind of gets into a crouching position, while the water's hitting him, and then the other lifeguard, the female lifeguard, comes in and is asking, hey, are you okay? For a moment, she says in a really deep, dark voice that only he can hear, take me to him. And he says, what? And then, he snaps out of it and hears what she's really saying, which is, hey, you mean to call an ambulance? He doesn't say anything. Instead, his arms go up violently, aggressively, and it cuts off before you see what he was attempting to do. But it probably is
him hurting her. So we're back at Starcourt Mall, and Elle and Max are having fun. The boys, on the other hand, are having a hard time finding a good gift. Elle's trying on different dresses, and let's skip this part a little bit and move on to so they're now the girls now move over to get ice cream at Scoops Ahoy with Steve. And it seems like in the back, Dustin is actually and Eric are making a lot of progress with well, not a little bit of progress. They got one sentence, which is the week is long. They actually made a little bit of progress with it, so it's good. They probably will do a lot more now that they're getting used to it. So the girls take off, and they actually meet up with the boys outside. The boys are kind of making up stuff. Elle at that point goes up to Mike, says, "I'm dumping you." Then they take off. The girls take off. They get on the bus, looking at each other like, "I can't believe we just did that." We see Hopper's now at the restaurant that he was trying to get. Shucks. Where Joyce is not to be found. She's actually still with. She went with this one guy who's supposed to help her with electromagnetic fields. And his name is Scott Clark. I want to say that's the teacher for the kids. I could be wrong. Sorry. I want to say that was the teacher. It's hard to keep track of some of the people in this, but yeah. So she's still there. He's kind of freaking out because it's taking her quite a while to actually show up, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. So she's kind of told how the electromagnetic fields work and what can happen with an unstable field, which will stop magnets from actually doing what they do and stick to metal objects. So she's wondering, why is it happening at her home? He says, well, it could just be coincidence that maybe you're seeing patterns that aren't really patterns, that don't really mean anything. And then she says, what if that's not the case? He says, well, there could be a huge machine, but it would cost billions of dollars. It would take a lot of voltage, and it would be very hard to actually come about, or to come through with something like this. Like who could possibly do it? So back with Steve, Eric, and Dustin, they have finished up the line that Dustin had recorded. It says, "The week is long, the silver cat feeds, when blue meets yellow in the west." So it's code. Eric is very certain about it being correct. So they don't understand what it fully means, but maybe they can do something with it. Now, as they're walking along, Steve sees like a little horse ride thing, the kind you put a quarter in and the kid gets on it and it kind of just moves in place in a circle. Well, he stops while they're still walking ahead. He says, and they look back and see he's like hunched down. He's like, "I need a quarter." So he puts it in and says, "Listen, listen." And they hear the music, and it's the same music from the recording of the Russian. So they think that it came from the mall. They think that he was speaking like literally right there. Oh, I'm sorry. One thing I forgot to mention. So Billy they showed another glimpse of him in the Upside Down, and he again is talking to himself, like a clone of himself. And he asked, "What do you want from me?" And the clone says, "To build." And he says, "To build what you see here," or to build what you see. In my opinion, because they show that the sunlight is hurting him, they're trying to show that the Upside Down probably wants the rest of the world to be cloaked in the same spores and the same darkness and clouds.
to prevent the sunlight from hurting them. That is, I think, where all of this is going. So we go back to Hopper. He's back in the restaurant. He's completely drunk. Joyce did not show up. He's upset. Yeah, makes a big deal with the waiter, leaves money, brings the big bottle of wine with him, and as he's walking out, he kind of stumbles into someone that was sitting at the bar, and we get a glimpse of him. He had stumbled into the same Russian soldier that killed the scientist in the very first episode. So the Russians are there in the city, or in the town. So then maybe what Joyce is experiencing with the magnets might actually be the Russians doing. They're probably trying to open the Upside Down. Or at least that's what we think or what I think so far. So we go back now, it's nighttime. Billy, he's there with his car back at the same place where the monster was. And this time he brought the girl that was the other lifeguard that was checking on him. He apparently had, abducted her, tied her up, put duct tape over her mouth, knocked her out, and he brings her inside the building where the monster was. Lays her down, takes off the duct tape, says, you need to just be quiet and still, it'll be over in a sec. The monster comes over, huge, looked like it's made up of all the rat goo. Look like they all came together, and it looks like it's on all four legs, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a really weird thing. The first leg that comes out of the shadow, you also see kind of like a weird I don't know what it was, a weird like tapeworm kind of snake thing coming off of the leg, really tiny in comparison to the whole leg. It looked like it made a little hissing sound or something. It's really weird. So it looks like it's gonna, probably put a monster inside of her, just like it did Billy. And that's where the episode ends off. So that's it for the recap and the spoilers and sort of my review for it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll continue on with the remaining 6 episodes, and I'll see you on the next video. If you guys haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button. Gonna be coming out with more episodes of this, as well as another backstory episode, another indie spotlight pretty soon. It's gonna be this following week. And a few more surprises that I'm currently working on, and I hope you guys really enjoy them. Please like, share, comment what you think about the episode so far, episode 2. Tell me what your favorite scene is with this, if you noticed anything interesting, or if you noticed any interesting references to anything, 80s. I think I found a few, but I'm going to confirm that in a little bit. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care and have a great rest of your day.